Hello and welcome back to Outside Views. And yes, we need to talk, because when people talk about the economic consequence of Brexit, you know that they are usually focused on goods, and then they talk about the increased friction, the customs checks, and of course the long lines of trucks at the borders and all this stuff. But what is really often forgotten is the reality of the services sector. And you know how important the services sector is for Britain's economic output there. It's kind of the economic crown jewel. And you know, it's almost 80% of its total economic output. And the fun point is, before Brexit, that sector was really deeply integrated with the European Union, and services were making up over 40% of total UK exports to the EU. So the UK is, but at least was, a services superpower. And you know, all the promises of taking back control of borders, the promises of a thriving post-Brexit services sector, yeah, that has all been exposed as a fantasy. And now we see there recently was a research from the London School of Economics that shows what many businesses have been saying for years. The UK services exports to the EU, and I have to look that up. Fortunately, I have the teleprompter right behind the camera. The services exports to the EU have declined by around 16% in the markets most affected by the new trade barriers. And let's be very, very clear about what that means. This is not a minor dip or a small hiccup here. This is a massive, and we must never forget, self-inflicted wound to Britain's most important economic asset. And the problem is not a demand or the lack of demand for British services. It is a new reality created by the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, or the TCA. Because the TCA also mainly only covers goods. And because of that, there are now barriers for services with licensing restrictions, residency rules, and the lack of mutual recognition of professional qualifications. And this is the new red tape. New only for the British, because for a lot of other third countries that it existed before. And Britain wanted to eliminate red tape, but instead it has been massively amplified for the services sector. The British Chamber of Commerce has confirmed this, with nearly half of businesses citing red tape as a key barrier. And I read about a firm in Manchester that is losing European clients because the new licensing requirements prevent them from offering cross-border services. And another firm in Bristol has said their problem is delays and increased costs in hiring EU-based talent. And this is just a perfect example of the UK losing the ability to access the very people and clients it needs to thrive. And we must not forget that thing. It was covered up by all the lies and everything that was going around there, but it is exactly what was predicted before the referendum. And what I told everybody before we had the TCA. So there is no promise of global Britain materializing anywhere. And you know that they have some deals with non-EU markets, but that have not even offset a fraction of the losses that Brexit brought them. And of course, those trade deals with India and the US, in the end, they might have some long-term potential. But they will never be a substitute for frictionless access to the EU single market of over 450 million people right next door. And the future is not looking brighter. While around 70% of services are delivered remotely without restrictions, the remaining 30% are severely impacted. And this really makes it difficult for UK firms to market and promote their services in person, even if the work itself then can be done electronically. And there's even a new threat on the horizon, because there's a moratorium on customs duties for electronic transmissions. And that could be lost. And if that happens, it would introduce tariffs on the digital trade that currently accounts for the vast majority of the UK-EU services exports. And for me, this is now the final piece of the puzzle. Not to forget that there are still transitional periods running. I just have to mention the words euro clearing. And this proves that Brexit was never about economic opportunity. It was about a political project, and that has delivered a poorer and less connected and less dynamic UK. And the world-beating services economy unshackled from the EU that has been replaced by a reality of decline, of lost clients, and an institutional failure to align with the closest neighbors. But I'm really interested what you have to say about this. And as much as I am on the side of the conservatives in some other political areas, or more conservative people, let's say not the Conservative Party in general, but more conservative people in Britain. But on Brexit, I still cannot really grasp this stupidity of it. But I'm looking forward to your comments again. I know I will get a lot about this again. So we will see how that will go. But never forget, there are still transitional periods that will run out. And if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.